Miller is a longtime friend of the show and a comedian. Has done several gigs with us before in the past. And then, boom, got hit by the big casino.
Yeah, got the cancer, man.
How does now? Listen, I'm getting older, and I fear all of these old people things as well. But what did you have, and how did you find out?
Yeah, so I had bladder cancer. I had stage 2 muscle invasive bladder cancer.
Now, did you do anything to was that a result of anything?
They said that 50% of bladder cancers in men come out of smoking, and I was a smoker. I smoked from like 16 to 30. But they can't pinpoint exactly where it came from.
So
There's
it's a
no
possibility that it came from the smoking, but
exactly.
we don't know for sure. So what brought you to the hospital?
Yeah, so years ago, I had blood in my urine.
Okay.
And I went and got some scans done and everything. It turned out I had a narrow urethra, the only narrow thing on my body. Yeah. I'm very proud of it. Just like a spaghetti strand. So anyways, so they told me that's going to happen from time to time. So I was just so relieved that there wasn't cancer then, right? That I was like, forget it, okay. And every once in a while there'd be blood in my urine. But then...
That's just your spaghetti penis.
Yeah, I'm like, it's my urethra.
Yeah.
But then, whatever it was, about 2 years ago, it was totally different. There was like a tremendous amount of blood in my urine, blood clots in my urine.
What does that look like? Are you freaking out?
It's like a murder scene. Yeah, you're completely panicked because it looks like a murder scene in your toilet.
Now, if I don't mind, let me just stop. This happened to me one time where I went to make a number one and there was blood there and I freaked out.
Yeah.
And turned out that I had a tiny, tiny little cut on the head of my pee-pee, and that was actually bleeding. It wasn't coming out with the urine. So, but man, the horror that I felt when I looked down and I saw blood. So I can't imagine if you look down and see a murder scene.
No, and like when I used to have it was all related to my urethra. It would be like a little pink, right?
Right.
But this was just red.
Okay.
So obviously there's an issue.
Burning? Does it burn?
I didn't have any burning until I started passing bladder stones.
Okay.
Which are these giant stones that collect in your bladder. We'll talk about that momentarily.
Please.
But yeah, so then I started making my appointments, and I just started a new job, so it took me a while to get in to see a new GP, and then you got to get the referral to the urologist, and all this time.
So you have to wait while you're peeing blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all the time things are getting worse. And then I started developing incontinence, right? Like I walked to the bathroom and I would just start urinating and I couldn't control it. Man. Like it would go from 0 to I'm wetting myself right now.
And is it bloody?
Sometimes, not always.
Just to make it worse.
Yeah. But this is a nightmare, right? Like because you want to go about your life, you don't want to stop living.
Right.
You still want to go out. And I'm still performing at this point. Oh. Right? Well, so I still have to get on stage.
If you got on stage and said, I just got to warn you at any time I might pee myself, I would be like, I saw the greatest comedian in the world.
Exactly. But it is hard to bring people back because then I would just be waiting to see the guy pee himself. I wouldn't care what he was saying. Right. I'd be waiting those 45 minutes to see that stain build in his pants.
That's how Bert started with his shirt, taking his shirt off.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. That would be my thing then, right? Just
the guy who wets himself.
Yeah, he was pretty funny, but his pants were dry by the end. What a bummer. What a bummer.
We missed out. So, okay, I'm sorry. So you're at work trying to go on about your day, but you're having the incontinence.
Yeah, just a mess. And so I finally get in to see the urologist, and they start running tests. And this was the worst. Look, it's never a good experience to get cancer. There's no way to be told. Great way to be told you have cancer. But they start with like urinalysis stuff, and then I don't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and I get an email. Yes, I get an email that says you have new results in your patient portal. So I go in there, and the result of one of these tests said most likely outcome is one of these types of cancer. Right, so I'm reading this in an email, and
nobody calls you to tell you.
Nobody called me to tell me. I'm trying not to panic. I'm trying not to freak out. And I had an appointment that week with my urologist, and I'm like, just keep it together. Who knows? This could be nothing. Maybe it's just a possible outcome. They happened to call me that same day and say, hey, you're supposed to see the doctor on Friday, but he's not going to be able to make it. Can you see him again? And it was 3 weeks later. And I was like, no, because you guys told me I have cancer.
Yeah.
So I have to see him right away.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, he's going to be out of town, and there's some this, and there's some that. And, like, they kept trying to push me off.
Are you guys not that concerned that I have cancer? Because maybe that would make me be like, well, they're not concerned with it.
That was my reaction, too, right? Because I'm like, maybe this test isn't a big deal. And they're like, well, it's not the gold standard. There's other ways we tell.
Right.
But they were never like, no, it's not a possibility. So, anyways, they finally did. Somebody called somebody, and they finally got me in to see them that Monday.
Okay.
And in the interim of that, I wound up having like an MRI or something, and I was talking to somebody about that test result, and they were like, there's no way they sent you that test. You're not supposed to see that test. And then they went into my patient portal. They're like, oh, my God, I'm really sorry. Man. So anyways, I go in, and he's like, yeah, we got to do a cystoscopy. That's where they run a camera down your urethra with
in the
no
hole,
anesthesia.
in the D hole.
Yeah, it's really a way to live. It's really a way to live. You lay back, you breathe deep, and they run a camera down there. Luckily, Joe's not controlling it, so it got done right the first time. And
you're awake while they put it in.
You're awake while and they talk you through it, right? It's like that old dentist joke where it's like they're talking to you while in their mouth. They're showing you on the camera what they're looking at.
But you're going too fast. This is
getting the camera in.
Yeah, getting the camera in is what I need to know. So is it the size of a catheter?
Yeah, probably a little bigger than a catheter.
Oh, this is the worst. This is I at this point I would have been like, I'm just going to keep the cancer.
Yeah.
Honestly, I recently had a catheter done.
Yeah.
They put it in while I was under, but took it out while I was awake.
Yeah, I've had that done a couple times too.
That one was like, I mean, it really wasn't bad, but you do feel it. And I can't imagine what it felt like going in. And the other thing is that I have not seen your penis before, but I imagine that we both have similar, based on our body sizes, we have similar penises. Mine is great. It does a full functioning job. I've created 2 children. But when it is not in peak performance time, when it is flaccid, and also when strangers want to put things in it,
of course,
I'm telling you, it goes back into the cave.
Yeah. It's not a good look for me. I'm a never nude. I shouldn't be standing anywhere, flaccid. Ever.
Yeah.
The whole thing is like traumatizing. I don't want to go through any of this. So they're having to get to the head of my penis. They're putting a little bit of lidocaine at the tip of the penis, which is all they can do. It's nothing.
And then they're jamming something in there,
and they run it down there. Yeah, and it's just the craziest pressure and pain, and it's so bizarre. And it's not as painful as I thought it would be, but it's so
just
mentally weird.
It's weird
and so bizarre. And they go through the whole thing, and they're taking pictures inside there, and they're showing you. And
I just thought of something that you said. You've had the other thing. You've had to take it. Like you've done this more than once. They put the camera in once, but they probably had to do other things to you.
Right. So the catheter I had done, because I've had a couple of procedures now to go into my bladder.
Right.
So I've had a catheter a couple of times, and they put that in when you're out, but I have to have this procedure, the cystoscopy, done every 3 months now.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So you're like a pro now?
Yeah, it's really great. It's terrible every time. It's not like what I imagine is like if you go to the gym regularly, things get better. That's what I've heard. That's what I've been told. But no, this just stays terrible all the way through.
Yeah.
So
okay, so they go in, and the first time, what do they come out and tell you?
So they come out and they see that there's a tumor, and the tumor itself is covered in these bladder stones, which you can see here. So,
oh my God, they're the size of the tip of your finger.
Yeah. So I was passing these. So what happened was my tumor.
No wonder why you're bleeding.
Yeah. So my tumor was covered in these bladder stones. So he couldn't tell me exactly what was happening. He's like, I can't see it because it's so calcified.
There's a bunch of rocks on it.
Yeah. So then they go in, and so this is a couple weeks later. I have a surgery. They take the tumor out, and the doctor comes to me and says, I can't be for sure, but I think this is your best case scenario. I think it's non-muscle invasive. You'll have a little bit of chemo, and that'll be that. This is great news.
Okay, so great news.
So
you're
awesome.
Happy, yeah.
But I can't tell you for sure because we got to do the whole biopsy.
Okay, but right now we're looking good.
Right now we're feeling good. So I go home. A couple days later, I go in to take the catheter out, and they tell me, we're not going to have your results. Don't worry about it. So I go by myself. I'm like, okay, fine. My girl's like, she's like, I'll come with you. I'm like, no, because you're going to have to take a lot of time off work. Like, we don't need to do this one.
Right.
So I go down, they take the catheter out, and then the physician's
you're walking around
assistant,
at home with the catheter.
Yeah. Yeah. The physician's assistant comes in, go over the catheter, talk, and then she says, look at this. Your results are in. And I'm like, oh, cool. And she said it with such like a light voice that I'm like, here we go. And then she goes, okay. Oh. Yeah, it's muscle invasive. This isn't good.
Oh.
You're going to need to call either Moffitt or Florida Oncology right away. And I started asking her questions, of course. And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, can I talk to the doctor? He's not here.
Cool. This doesn't seem like how cancer should be treated.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, it was just the worst. And she was nice as she could be. She doesn't know anything.
Right.
Her job is to take a tube out of my penis. That's it. That's what she does.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, it's muscle invasive. And then that opens up a whole host of things because it becomes, has it spread throughout your body? And what do we do now? So
did you have any other symptoms where you're feeling anything? Like I have a thing I call ass lightning. every once in a while it feels like a bolt of lightning hit me right in the butthole, and I'm like, what just happened? And I go, I have to have cancer. I have to have some sort of prostate cancer or something.
Right.
Do you ever have anything?
Have I ever had ass lightning?
No, but I'm saying, like, are there any other symptoms of your?
No, for me it was so it started with frequency, blood, then incontinence, and then bladder stones, and that's enough.
So that's enough to go to the doctor. But it was all based in the one. It was all one after the other. So you kind of
it all happened real quick. Yeah.
So now you get bad news, and then what is your next step?
Yeah, so we went over to Moffitt. They were great. They wanted to take the bladder out. They wanted to take my bladder and prostate out.
Which would mean what for you in the future?
Yeah, so that would be more than likely a colostomy bag.
Okay, for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life, And look, I'm not a young guy anymore, but I'm only 49, 48 when this started happening.
Right.
And I don't necessarily want to have a bag.
Yeah.
So we went through a lot of different options. We settled on doing radiation, or started with chemo, So we did chemo, did a couple months of that, and it was still there. Cancer was still present.
Now, why didn't you lose any weight during the chemo?
Isn't that aren't I a hero?
I mean, just
aren't I a brave hero? I know.
It's
the big question.
You got the fat chemo.
Yeah, like I would run into friends. They're like, "I heard you had cancer," and they were so disappointed, right? Because like I was still fat.
Right.
There's a lot of people that couldn't do what I did.
Yeah, you really are a beacon for people who of hope.
You're supposed to drink only one boost in the morning, but I'm crushing 3 or 4
actually want to study you to find out.
Yeah.
I'm a medical marvel. Medical marvel. There was 1 week, because you get weighed like every week. There was 1 week where I did lose like 8 pounds.
Oh.
And then that made me scared, so I immediately just really buckled down and got back to it.
I will not give in to this weight loss.
No. Yeah. Cancer's not going to be the best of me. Yeah, I'm going to be a hero. Yeah, that was the one silver lining, right? Where it's like, I'm going to get so sick, and I did, but I'm going to get so sick, I'm not going to eat. I'm going to lose weight.
Yeah.
But what wound up happening was I had a PICC line in, which I don't know if that's a
for your, like blood and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an IV that's inside your arm that runs directly to your heart. And when they put it in, they told me, you can't get this wet at all, and that includes sweat.
Oh,
I'm like, what do you?
Yeah,
like, how do I not? This is August in Florida. I was like, well, I walk the dogs twice a day. And they're like, you can't do that. You can't do anything.
Oh boy.
So I was already sedentary, right? And then it just was like amplified like crazy. So I didn't. So now I'm at the point.
You had an excuse.
Yeah, it was great. Like that part of it. I'd like to help around the house, but cancer, fighting cancer over here. So I didn't move forever. So any calories I put in, there's no way I was going to be in a caloric deficit ever.
That's so weird. You can't even sweat. Like they don't. It seems like they would have some sort of piece that they could put there that would be resistant to water.
Yeah. What happens is like if that gets wet, the possibility of an infection is there, and then it goes straight to your heart.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Yeah. So they were like, if it gets wet at all, you have to come immediately in, and we got to change it out.
My daughter is on her way to school, and she just texted me and said, she's 11. She said, your show is weird. I'm changing the channel.
I don't blame her.
I didn't know she'd be listening. We're talking about putting colostomy bags and PICC lines.
Well, it's a comedy show. Here we go.
All right, so this is bad now. Now you got the PICC line in. You can't get it wet. You've not gotten any good news.
No, it's all bad news, man.
Then what's happening?
Yeah, so I go through a couple months of chemo, lose the hair, gain the weight, all standard cancer stuff.
You lost all your hair?
Yeah.
Really? I hadn't seen you in a long time. You got a good...
It's coming back strong, baby.
Now,
it's coming back strong. I lost most of it. It got super wispy, and then it was just like I felt like I looked like an old guy that was trying to pretend that he still had hair. So I was like, just shave it off.
Just take it off.
Crazy. Yeah. So I went through a couple months of the chemo, and then they had to wait. Waited a month or two.
See how it interacted. Yeah.
So then we go back. They go back in the bladder. They start scraping the bladder wall, and there's still cancerous cells through there. So then we did radiation. So we did radiation and chemo at the start of this year. That was the last ditch. They're like, if this doesn't work,
taking the bladder
we got to take the bladder out. And that's a nightmare, right? Because it's like you're in the hospital. I think it's for 3 weeks you're in the hospital. And then they said it's 3 months after that of healing.
Right.
And you have to self-catheterize the whole time.
You have to do it.
You have to do it.
How is that? Months. I can't even stab myself with a needle for Ozempic. Yeah. How are you doing that? How are you doing that?
I didn't. That's why, if the next step is if it comes back and I have to take my bladder.
Oh, then you'd have to do it at home. Okay.
Yeah. So the best case scenario for me was if they did the surgery, they're going to give me something called a neobladder, which is they sort of build a fake bladder inside you.
Right.
And then you have to do that. You have to self-catheterize. after that.
Oh my word!
Yeah, which is just a nightmare. They're like, you won't know, you won't feel your bladder be full. So it could, if it's full and you bend over, you could
go.
wet yourself. I'm like, I don't. Please, let's try to keep the bladder.
My word, this is horrendous.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah,
it's terrible. Cancer's not great.
No, but not only the cancer is that your options are just so limited. I mean, you're either going to have bad or worse.
That's it.
Yeah,
and all I wanted to get was an understanding of the possibilities of it returning, right? Because that's the question.
Right.
Because they kept telling me, all these doctors are saying, the reoccurrence is really high, the reoccurrence is really high. And finally, I talked to this one oncologist who was amazing. He sat with me for like an hour and went over every possible scenario.
Isn't that great whenever you have somebody who knows what they're talking about and tells you? So, yeah, because there's a lot of people that are just like, they're dealing with a lot of things. This is the most important thing in your life.
Yep.
They have 9 other things going on that's the most important to all those other people. So they're doing that. When somebody connects with you and goes, here's what you got. Here's what's going on.
Right.
So good.
And took so much time to answer every question. He was unbelievable. And finally, I asked him, I'm like, I keep hearing the reoccurrence is high. What is the reoccurring rate? And he's like, it's not exact. And you did all the things that a doctor's supposed to do.
Right.
And then he's like, it comes back about 20% of the time. And I was like, well, all I'm hearing is that 80% of the time it doesn't come back.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to keep my bladder. We'll just do the radiation and the chemo. And that's what we wind up doing. And radiation is terrible too. And like I urinate completely different now than I used to. On top of the narrow urethra, now there's probably scarring in my urethra. So it's just, it can go wherever. So I'm sitting and peeing a lot, which I don't mind anyway. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, we've all had the split stream before. We don't like that.
Yeah.
That's why I tell my wife I keep wanting to put a urinal in the house and she won't let me.
Let you be a man.
Yeah, right.
Come on.
I would go for one of those old school stadium troughs if they let me. Just put a big trough in there.
You're a classy guy. I like that. Fill it with ice. Keep it nice.
Yeah. You know it's
like the hub downtown.
Yeah. Let's keep that water flowing.
Tell him that while he's peeing in his backyard.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just went to see Ralphie. So so you go there and you get the radiation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
When did they give you the good news?
Yeah. So I just back in June. Finally got the all clear.
Good for you.
Yeah. So it was like they went back in, did the cystoscopy, looked around, did some tests, blood work, urinalysis. They're like, okay, no signs of cancer.
That's great.
Yeah. And so I'll do it again in October, and we'll just keep doing it every 3 months.
Listen, it's good news. You took an optimistic view on it, 80% that it won't come back.
That's it, man. Look, like it's scary. It stunk. And there were so many months where you feel terrible, but the only thing to do, the only way through it, is through it, right? So you just got to keep going.
Can I be honest with you about something, though? There's a lot of guys that if they had colostomy bags, it wouldn't make sense. You'd be fine with it. I think, if you...
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not.
It is. You grow that mustache out to where it's out to here, and you carry around a briefcase and be like, guess what this is, folks? That, I think, that's a whole new gimmick for you.
Sure, yeah. It just becomes part of my shtick.
Part of your thing.
Yeah. Because I would have to lean into it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be embarrassed of it. I'm not going to be ashamed of it. We're going to get some interesting bags. It's got to be see-through. Maybe I wear it on the outside of a tuxedo.
Sure.
Get some tailored clothes.
Yeah,
for sure.
You know what's up.
Yeah, because I don't want to be shameful and hide it away. I would absolutely have to lean into it.
Where would you hide it? I'd have to put it in the small of my bag.
For me, I'd probably just stuck it under my gut. I
guess I could do that too.
Let it hold itself there.
You want to hear a funny colostomy bag story?
Always.
Okay. So this has got to be maybe 1998, 99. I'm at 98 Rock and doing mornings, and I want to do a Saturday night shift to do things that I can't do on the morning show. It wasn't my show, so I couldn't. So they're like, "Oh yeah, go ahead, whatever, do Saturday night." So me and this other guy did a shift on a Saturday night, and what it ends up being is just a bunch of drunk people calling the show. And this girl kept calling, and she kept going, you should come over, you should come over. And we're like, all right, let's go over there. So she's like, bring some beer and come over. So we get off at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we go to the store, and we get, we actually had beer in the studio that we were drinking when we were on, and we took the rest of the case with us. And we go over to this girl's house, and she does not tell us this, but when we get there, she has a colostomy bag. Ooh. She is not an ugly. In fact, ma'am, if you're out there listening, I would love for you to call the show and we could relive this moment together. She's not ugly. She's maybe a 6.5 out of 10, but like a Clearwater 6.5, a skinny blonde, and she's wearing a blue nightgown and she has the bag. And I don't know what procedure she had or why she had the bag, but I'm out at this point. I'm out.
Sure. Yeah.
The guy that I'm with is like, I'm still in. I was like, all right, go do what you got to do. So they go off and they do their thing. I fall asleep on the couch. And sometime about an hour later or whatever, I hear noise. They're walking upstairs and a door and keys rattling. And I jump up and she busts out and she goes, "That's my husband." And we're like,
no.
Husband? You got a bag and we're in your house and you begged us to come over and now we got. So I go into the kitchen, grab the beer that was left over, cans of beer in a cardboard case. He opens the door. We're both standing there. He looks at the both of us. I go, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Okay." I hand him the beer and I go, 9-8 Rock, Beer Patrol. You're the last stop of the night. Have a great night. He's like, "Cool, thanks." We're like, "Cool."
Right.
And we ran out of there and ran away. That's my best colostomy bag story.
That's I wouldn't call that a colostomy bag story, but there was a colostomy bag involved.
It's the main focus to me because if the bag wasn't there, it would have been the weird threesome that I had. So instead, it becomes the colostomy bag story, and I had nothing but sleep on the couch.
That makes sense. I also like the fact that in the moment of panic, you did go back for the beer.
Yeah.
Well, I grabbed the beer because I was like, I'm just going to say that we're dropping off beer. And then I go, how do I justify that there's like 4 cans of beer and a 12-pack left? Like, how do I do this? And I just handed it to him, and we were both so confused. And then he's like, "You guys are from 9-8 Rock?" I go, "Yep." Big Rig and Brian Medlin. He goes, "All right, awesome." And I go, "Awesome." And we ran out of there, and I was like, later. And then we had the 9-8 Rock Jeep with us, too, so it wasn't like we could get away with it. Yeah. So no cancer involved, but that is my colostomy bag story.
That's fantastic. I would if I had a colostomy bag, I'd definitely get the blue 90 to go with it.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's the move.
And it was a see-through 90, which made it really weird because you could see the bag. And I thought, that's not exactly what I was expecting.
That takes the sexiness out of a 90, I think.
Didn't it
medical
make
devices
1,000 times better of a story than if we would have just had a weird threesome between me and this guy and this
that
girl.
colostomy bag may have saved your life because you may have still been going at it.
You're right.
And the husband comes in.
You're right. You know my stamina.
Yeah.